In film production, there are 5 key stages of the production process. So you have development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. Now I'm going to talk about all of these different stages in as much detail as possible, but I also want you to bear in mind that the stages and the processes of each one will vary depending on the niche that you're working in. So if you're working in feature films, the processes will look very different to commercials, and again, very different to television. They all have that overarching, 5 stages, but the details and the finer, intricacies of each stage will vary depending on which niche you're working in. And that's because essentially you're creating different things, although it's still a film at the end of the day, and certain things have to stay the same. The development of an advertising commercial and a feature film are going to be vastly different to also a TV commercial or a TV series, right? And within that, you also have different producers who work at different stages. So you'll have a development producer, you can have line producers, you can have post-production producers, you have distributors who effectively work as producers for distribution. And you've got all these different producers who carry the process through each stage as well. And you'll always have one producer who works at the top, at the whole, and oversees the whole production, and is that sort of thread throughout every stage. And throughout each stage, you bring on different people with different skill sets to be able to manage certain aspects that you as the producer of the whole project might not be able to do. So I want that to be really clear and be kept in mind, because otherwise it can get a bit convoluted. So we'll start with development. So development, the 3 sort of key parts of developing any project is that the script has to be completed, the financing has to be in place, and the various partners have to be brought on board. For a commercial project, the way it would start is the script will essentially be created by a marketing agency who will be instructed by a brand that they would like to do a film of some sort. Marketing agency have internal teams that would come up with the whole creative. Then a creative brief will be created by the marketing agency, and that marketing agency brief will then be sent out to a production company. That's where the producer of the production company will come on board. So they will read that brief and then they will create a budget. They will budget the project based on the script and the creative and the timelines and how much money is available. And then they'll send that back to the marketing agency for the client and the marketing agency to decide on whether they want to go ahead. There will also be a point where different directors and key creatives will be sent to the marketing agency as sort of options of who can be the creative helm of this project. So it's essentially you're pitching for the work, and the budget is created by the producer alongside pitching the different directors. So you send that off to the marketing agency, they then decide, hopefully you win the job, and that's the end of development. And once you get the green light, then you move into pre-production. That's commercial work. Now, development in features is a whole different ballgame. So let's say in this scenario, it's the production company that have the script. So what will happen is a producer will work with a writer to create a script, and you'll develop the script. So you have also got, bear in mind, you've got development producers who can work alongside here, and they generally are constantly on the lookout for new stories and new ideas, reading loads of books, watching the news, reading loads of they've got so many different resources that they pull from to find a story. And once they find a good story, they pair a writer together, they write the script. That script is then researched and put through so many different tests to see how it will appeal to audiences. And in the meantime, the producer starts putting together a business plan and a sort of massive pitch document. They then go out and start sending out the script or the business plan, the pitch deck, whatever they have already, and they start looking for finance. And you can find finance from you've got private investors, you've got film funding bodies, you've got crowdfunding, you've got studios, distributors that you can find financing, co-productions. There's a whole different way, and finance in and of itself is a whole other topic, and raising finance. But yeah, effectively, whilst the script is being developed, the producer of the project will go out there and they will effectively sell the project to as many people as they can to try and get financing for the film. At the same time, you'll also, if not already attached, have a director who's coming on board to direct the project. And you might even send the script out, if it's in a state to be sent out, to agents to pass on to cast to hopefully get talent attached to the project. Talent attached to a project also massively helps with financing a project. If you've got a big name attached to a feature film script saying, yep, I'll play the lead role if this ever gets the green light, that will help with film financing, because that also helps with marketing down the line and distribution. So yeah, so those are sort of two ways. And effectively, once you've got the script finalized, the financing in place, and all the various media partners and creative partners on board to the project, you're out of development. But it is a long process. It can take years in some cases. For some feature films, 10 years in development. Commercials not so much. But yeah, so it is a very lengthy process, and it is the role of the producer is to really manage that whole process and be the lead of the business end and the creative end too. So then you go into pre-production. So then once you get into pre-production, this is where the role of the producer really changes. So previously, where you were, going around networking, trying to find finance, bringing people out to lunch and trying to convince them to give you money to make your film, or, talking to an agency or a client, or pitching, your work. Now that you've gotten that work and it's all signed off and you know that you can, do the film, you need to start preparing for production. So that effectively means you are going to start working on crew, hiring all the right crew. You're going to start working through the permits, the locations, the cast, the creatives needed, and you'll be setting up the accommodation, if there's travel, if there's visas, the equipment, and you need to get all of these things in place and ready so that when you turn up on the first day of principal shooting, everything goes off without a hitch, And that's, so you'll spend, sometimes you'll spend a week, sometimes you'll spend 3 weeks, sometimes you'll spend 2 months in pre-production, sometimes a year. It really varies on the project, but that's all worked out in development because the budget's already been done, the finance has already been done. So you know how much time you have for pre-production. So the production team as a whole are effectively working towards the deadline, and the deadline is first day of principal shooting. And you'll have various teams that will come in as you get closer and closer to the deadline to start working. For example, costume, set. The director will be there the whole time. They'll be prepping all the creative sides of things and making all those creative decisions, talking to the different people, talking to whoever needs to have an answer that day, getting the cast all done, rehearsing sometimes. Yeah, so pre-production is a very hectic time for a producer, but it's a very exciting time because this is where you really get to get your teeth stuck in. You get to start organizing and really start pulling things out and making sure that everything is set up for first day of shooting. And then, yeah, once you get to the end of pre-production, that means you're in production. So that's when the hard work really begins. And that's where everybody turns up on set. It's what everybody knows. It's where everybody turns up on set and principal filming begins. And for a producer, you tend to work, I was saying earlier, you tend to work weeks in advance because you do. So if a producer, I always say, if a producer's done their job well on set, they don't really have anything to do because on that day, because they've already done it all. That's already been planned, 2 weeks out. They're working on 2 weeks or 4 weeks ahead. And that's what they'll be doing that day. So as long as all of the attention to detail has been met and all the work has been done correctly, on that day, the producer doesn't really have anything to do with the day-to-day runnings. That will be the assistant director who runs the set, the first AD, alongside the director, obviously, who's leading creative. But yeah, so in production, basically, all the producer does is make sure that production is running smoothly. They'll sit there, they'll watch the dailies, they might watch what's happening on set, making sure that everything is going well, but really they're prepping for post-production and prepping for distribution and making sure that all the funding is still coming in, and make sure they're going to be able to pay everybody, and running all of that, making sure that everybody is happy. And if there are any issues, generally you'll push that up the line. It will start with the production manager, who will get the brunt of the issues. And if the production manager can't fix it, if you have a line producer, then it will go up to the line producer. If the line producer can't fix it, then it will go up to the producer. So really, that's on a feature film. So really, if you have a lot of buffer between what's actually happening in the nitty-gritty on set, on the day, between you, the producer, and the actual production team on set, that's on a feature. On a commercial, you won't have as many people in between. You might, depending on the budget, but generally you won't. So the producer will probably be more involved in the day-to-day, but they will still be thinking about what's happening in the next few days in post-production and managing all of those things and setting things up, so that way the project can go off without a hitch once you're out of production. So yeah, so once principal filming is finished, you're out of production, and then you're moving into post-production. Post-production is where the magic happens. It is where everything comes together and you get to see everything for the first time. And it's also where you get to see everything for the first time. But it's really exciting. I love post-production. It's my favorite part because you get to see all the hard work of everybody come together, and you get to see, this little baby that you've nurtured through development, pre-production and production now come together on a timeline and actually see it become a physical product. And so that's where the editors will come in, and VFX and sound and, colorists, and oh goodness, there's a whole host of people in post-production. I mean, I could go on for days about post-production because it is complex. I actually think there might be a masterclass that Rory Nichols has done on editing. You might want to check that one out. But yeah, so post-production is really, it's a whole other workflow. And you have post-production producers as well. For a producer, a lead producer of a whole project, their role really in post-production is managing budget and managing creative. And well, they're also managing time. But you'll be sitting there, you'll be doing a lot of reviews, you'll be making sure that if you're working on a commercial, the client is happy with it and the client is happy with the final end product. If you're working on a feature, again, you might have a client depending on who's financing. That the client is happy with the film, and you'll be doing reviews and you'll be giving notes and feedback, and you'll be sitting there alongside the director, and the director will ask you for feedback, because your job as well is to give creative input, because you have to make sure that the job stays on brief. So whilst the creative leader is really the director, as a producer, you're also giving a lot of creative, input, which is great. So once the film is out of post-production, then it's in delivery and distribution. That's a lot of paperwork more than anything else. For a producer, more than anything else, it's just a lot of paperwork. And you'll be working with a distributor. If you're in a feature film, you'll have met and decided on a distributor before you've even started pre-production. So those plans will have been in motion way before. Marketing the film will have been in plan way before you started anything, because you need all of those contracts for cast, for example, written up. You need to know where they need to be, if you're going to be doing promos with the cast, if they need to be at the premiere, and all those kinds of things. All of those things will already be agreed upon in development. So really, it's just about distribution is, from a lead producer's point of view, is really about executing the plans you agreed in development. And getting the paperwork done. And that is long, very, very long. But yeah, essentially those are the 5 stages of production and the role that a producer has in all of those 5 stages.